Chris Schmidt with the Average Joe Sports Show. And it's Northern Iowa week, but are we still thinking about the Buffs?
I'm Gary Sharp. Nebraska woke up and they chose violence last Saturday. What will they do this Saturday?
I'm Bill Doleman. It'd be nice if Ron Brown had a pep talk with Nebraska's receivers about what it means to block at NU.
It's Elijah Herbel here. Before we get out, we'll also lock in our predictions for Nebraska-Northern Iowa and take a look around the other games going down in the Big Ten this weekend. It's the Average Joe Sports Show.
Welcome to it, Pod 53 of the Average Joe Sports Show. That's Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Quick score predictions. We can tap out of this one, fellas.
I might stick with the one I had for Colorado because I think it was the closest with, 73-8. I think I nailed that, and maybe I'll just stick with that for a second week in a row.
I was pretty close. Aside from who I picked to win, I was pretty close.
Yeah. Right.
It happens.
The week of hell that is Elijah Herbel's prediction gone wrong. Sharpie, you got it right on the nose, didn't you? You said 28-10 and
yes,
4 million yards and penalties, and should have been 35-3, something like that.
I think I said Nebraska will jump out to a 28-0 lead, and then they'll, the second half will be disjointed because the Big 12 officials will take over. I think I was pretty close to that. I didn't have them scoring 10.
You're about it.
Yeah.
Thought they'd get some yards and some points put up, but we put
are we on to Northern Iowa like as a fan base?
No.
Are we going to stick with Colorado for a while?
I think you're sticking with Colorado for a little bit. Just, man, that was an incredible atmosphere and fun, and was juiced up and revved up, and you want tomorrow night as we tape on Friday to go well, clearly. And then you're kind of thinking about Illinois. So you got some gray area right now for the Fighting Panthers. Like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show. YouTube's where you can like and subscribe. Watch this podcast, the AJ Sports Pod, on Twitter, Spotify, and iTunes for the digital download. But Vegas is saying 32.5. It's been down to 30. It's been down to 29. Currently, it's probably right around that 30.5 number. And Nebraska is a team that needs to go out and handle their business. That's been the talk. They've been talked up by Coach Rule. And can Nebraska be mature? I want to start, though, with chasing 3, because that was just an incredible look behind the camera, even more so, Sharpie, for this Nebraska-Colorado rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska went out and kicked Colorado's ass and made a movie about it. I mean, there you go, Colorado.
I love it. It's so good, it's movie worthy.
I said earlier in the week that game was won before they ever got into the stadium. It's like when you have friends that go on a destination wedding, it's just them, and they go to get married, and then they come back and they have this big party. Like the outcome is already predetermined. They just want you to show up and have fun. And that's kind of what it felt like to me. Nebraska was ready to win that football game. They prepared to win that football game. They had more talent. They had better coaching. They were prepared for the moment. They met the moment. And they just invited 90,000 people to partake in a party. And Colorado played the role of the Washington Generals. And you couldn't have asked for, the second half aside, you couldn't have asked for Nebraska finally took another step in being the new Nebraska. Where, guys, they won a game like that, where we've been around long enough of late, where they've stubbed their toe, and you're like, is this the moment? Is this the moment? And they're 2-0, and they still got things to work on. But, man, I don't think people will forget Colorado for a while.
I mean, the way I see it.
Go ahead, Bill. Well, I was going to say, I don't think that they're going to forget Colorado because, well, it's the last game in that rivalry for a long, long time. The schedule, though, sets up very well for Nebraska to have had that matchup, the intensity of the matchup, and all of that was on display in chasing 3. This was more than just another game, especially with everything around Bud Crawford and the pregame and the during game and then the after the game, giving him the game ball. So Colorado was the show that Nebraska wanted it to be. Now the schedule shifts to Northern Iowa. I think you're going to have still, Gary, there's still people milling around the house and party that they got invited to. Some people just never left. So I think you're going to have people who are going to come back on Saturday because they had such a good time last weekend, and it's going to be a different atmosphere. It's going to be a little bit more festive than the intensity that we saw on display. But I think the schedule sets up well because if Nebraska had lost to Colorado, you've got the Northern Iowa game to bounce back and work out whatever went wrong to get a win to feel good. Well, instead, what happens is Nebraska dominates. And in all likelihood, there's not going to be enough of a hangover that you will stub your toe against Northern Iowa. Not like 1992 when you dominate Colorado 52-7, and then you go take on another team from Iowa in the slow-moving Iowa State Cyclones, where Marv Seiler, in looking like he should be running in black and white film, runs through Nebraska's defense, and they get beat 19-10 because of the hangover. To have Northern Iowa at this point in the schedule after what transpired last week is perfect because if Nebraska does not play, if it looks more like the second half than it did the first half, I think Matt Rule has an opportunity to get your attention because Illinois is right around the corner on Friday night.
And
this game is perfect for Nebraska, and I think the intensity that they went through against Colorado is on display in Chasing 3 to bring it back to Schmidt's question.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Bill, in that after years and years of a Husker fan base that has complained about Nebraska's scheduling, which I think they've been right. Like, ever since Nebraska sued the Big Ten back in 2020, you've had gauntlet schedules year after year after year. How about this for a schedule coming up in Nebraska's favor? Like, you have the emotional charged game in Colorado, and what do you worry about? You worry about the hangover the following week. I don't think Northern Iowa is a team that, even if Nebraska comes out emotionally hungover on Saturday, I don't think Northern Iowa is a team that you truly have to worry about. You'll probably have moments where you look at it and go, well, I was expecting more from this Nebraska football team, but I think Nebraska, in the way that Matt Rule wants his program to be, could roll out there with the backups on Saturday and still go out there and win a football game. And I don't think you've been able to say that about Nebraska in a while. Just from what I saw in that second half against UTEP with the backups holding that same standard as the starters, I think if Nebraska rolled out there for a full game with the backups on Saturday, they can still go out there and win that football game. And that's kind of the sign of a healthy program. Again, Nebraska's not going to be doing that, but I think it kind of underscores the scheduling that Nebraska has, that, yeah, you have this emotionally charged game in Colorado. You have the perfect comeback, a home game against Northern Illinois. Physically,
Iowa.
Sorry, what'd I say? Northern Illinois? Thank God it's not Northern Illinois.
Team that just beat the Irish.
Yeah, thank God it's not them. That would be a disaster. But you have Northern Iowa, and I don't think that they're a pushover by any means, but they're a team that you athletically, physically have a major, major edge against. Go out there, do your business, get a win, and move on to Illinois week. Like, the scheduling has come up so perfectly for Nebraska here with how this sets up into the Big Ten slate that, you know, you had your proof of concept game in Colorado. Now you have a get yourself mentally and physically right game against Northern Illinois, and then it's Northern Iowa, and then you kick off the Big Ten schedule. I'm already thinking ahead to the Friday night contest against Illinois. Illinois is on the mind.
Well, I want to veer off the yellow brick road for 2 seconds, fellas. What's your hangover cure? What was it in college? Was it a trip to a diner? Was it what you got sick off of the night before? Was it sleep? Was it
shuttle? Pizza shuttle. Okay.
All right, pizza shuttle is your call.
Ramos. I think it was just getting back on the horse again. Because look, there were various places to go on Wednesday night, and then since the weekend started on Wednesday, you just had to keep it going on Thursday downtown, and then of course Friday, middle of the weekend, and Saturday, Sunday was NFL. Monday night football. So Tuesday was really kind of recovery day because that's just stupid to drink 7 days a week as a college student. So I would say the cure was maybe Tuesday.
For me, the cure was a cup of coffee and then show up for the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio.
Elijah, you look a little peaked. Shut up.
Hey, by the end of the show, the hangover is non-existent. It's gone. You just work your way right through it.
Yeah, made your head hurt for another reason for a couple hours. I had to go there. Usually it was some sort of burger, greasy food, some sort of greasy spoon. That was it.
Yeah.
That in the steam room.
You had a different type of hangover than me. Of food on a hangover, I'll pass. Just give me a cup of coffee and let me caffeine my way through it. Yeah, we'll be all right.
Sweat it out. Sharpie, are you concerned at all about the flip from spread offenses to ground and pound phone booth football?
No. And I think that's what Nebraska's going to see.
Next question.
Well, I think this defense is built to be really good, period. So the 2009 defense gave up 12 points in their first two games. This defense has given up 17. They are good at all three levels. They have depth. I think it doesn't matter what system they play because I think they're built to play physical, which they are. And then I think they're built to play in space. It doesn't mean against teams that, chuck it around like UTEP and Colorado, they're going to be fine every week. But I think they're conditioned mentally and physically that they can go out there and play against anybody regardless. And they can adjust. Nash didn't play a lot on Saturday night because Ty was a better option in rushing the passer because they knew Colorado was going to throw. Nash will play a lot tomorrow night. So I think they're a good defense, period. And I think Northern Iowa, they probably get more excited to play that style. I'm not saying they didn't get excited to play Colorado, but I think you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Because Northern Iowa wants to line up with 12 personnel and just go downhill. And Nebraska wants to be physical. I think guys are like, man, I want that. Because also, Nebraska is old school, guys. They're knocking people out. Look at the injury report from Colorado. Colorado is like, he's out, questionable, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. I think that's where we're headed with Nebraska football, is you're going to feel it the following week. And trust me, we haven't said that in 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
It's a throwback to how it used to be, where Nebraska beat you twice, once on the field and then once in the training room. Bill, we touched on the phone booth football. I do believe it's a nice preview for Illinois. They're going to want to run the football. They're ground and pound with the pig farmer. You're going to have Bill, we'll check in a minute. Elijah, Sharpie nailed it with Nebraska stylistically is not really going to be phased. It might just come down to who can out-duel Nebraska. It might just come down to turnovers. There are some tough teams on the slate, and don't look now, but Illinois and Purdue could be a little bit better than we thought going into ending the month of September into the month of October. Rutgers has always been a bit of a concern.
Well, if you listen to my team previews in the fall, Illinois less so, because Illinois had a lot that they needed to get right, but you also know that Bielema, 2 years of development under Brett Bielema is always something that you can't overlook. So that's kind of my take. And then with Purdue, I mean, he was year 2 in the system for a guy in Hudson Card that I think is a very talented quarterback. And they have Mockbee back, the running back. I was never sleeping on Purdue. That being said, I still think Nebraska stylistically matches up well. You get the first test, as you said, against Northern Iowa. And I'm not convinced that Northern Iowa is actually going to give you a great look at Big Ten football. In what they want to do, yes, but in what they can do, I am not all that convinced. We'll see. Northern Iowa hasn't truly been tested this season like they're going to be tested against Nebraska, and I think Nebraska has the ability to go out there and punch them in the mouth. And the difference between what Northern Iowa does and what Big Ten teams do is I think most Big Ten teams, from a talent point of view, aren't going to find themselves down by 2 or 3 touchdowns early in a football game like Northern Iowa might find themselves on Saturday. Does that change how Northern Iowa wants to play football? I guess we'll find out. But stylistically, I think Nebraska is going to match up well. I mean, we talked all last season long about how strong Nebraska was against the run. That's what Northern Iowa wants to do against you. They want to run the damn ball. They want to play in a phone booth. I think that's where Nebraska's defense excels. And kind of to Gary's point, like if you ask an offensive lineman, that's what I knew growing up, an offensive lineman would always prefer to play in a system where they run the damn ball. It's so much more fun to fire off the ball and to be the person that brings the punch as opposed to in a pass set where you're kind of reacting to what a defensive lineman's going to do. You don't have to do that whenever you're running the ball. You just get to drive off the ball and go make somebody that's what offensive line play is all about. And it's similar on the defensive side of the ball. Whenever you get somebody that fires off, Nebraska's got defensive linemen in Ty, in Nash, in Cam Linhart that I think they play at their best when someone fires off the ball and tries to make it a physical battle. I think Nebraska matches up well against Northern Iowa, and I don't have concerns about what Northern Iowa can do. Does it give you a good look? Sure, but I also didn't have concerns about Nebraska's ability to go out there and match up with a physical Big Ten team like Illinois or Purdue coming into this football season.
Hey,
Bill,
can I ask you a question? Did you guys edit me out after my dissertation about what happens if James Franklin gets the job at Florida? Is that what?
No, I did not. But we can go there after this question, Bill.
No, I've already given my explanation and all that. I don't want to go through it again, but that's
the After Dark Average Joe sports show with Bill Doleman. Bill, do you see a jump in special teams or perimeter blocking tomorrow night?
Well, I appreciate Matt Rule listening to the Average Joe Sports Show, because one of the points I made on Sunday was that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda has done a great job of fielding punts to save yards, not letting the ball continue to roll like Colorado did, which set up the Tommy Hill pick six, right? So he mentioned that in his press conference earlier the week, that at least they have been fielding the ball well on punts. But he was pretty I don't think he was you didn't have to read between the lines with what he was talking about with special teams. They got to get better. Now, again, this would be the week that you make sure that that's maybe the priority of the weekend, is that all phases of special teams have to be good. Yeah, you blocked the kick, but you've also allowed somebody to get to the punter. You've allowed a 60-yard return. You've had a missed field goal, and maybe it's time to give somebody another chance. Albano's been good on PATs, but maybe it's time to give somebody another chance for three. If you're going to chase those three, find somebody that can get you those threes and chase them down. So I think really for Nebraska this week is about your special teams play being solid in all phases of it. It's not just special teams. There are many phases to that aspect of the game, and that's been pretty glaring weakness, I think, for Nebraska so far against teams that you got to say, look, Colorado's probably not very good, and Utah got beat by Southern Utah. So has Nebraska really been tested in all phases? We think the defense is great. The offense is going to continue to improve, but special teams is one area that has to be consistent week in and week out, especially against a team like Northern Iowa.
The interesting thing about special teams is, and I agree with what Bill is saying, and it's kind of like, all right, year number 2, they fixed a lot of things, but we still talk about Garrett McGuire's position group, can't perimeter block, lazy route running, attention to detail, and there's some old faces and new faces in that room. We talk about Ed Foley on special teams. I don't want to overlook this because everything Bill said about Alvano and all we feel about Alvano is true. You need the head to match the toe. But can we observe something that one of the subtle things I thought on Saturday night that may have gotten lost, Brian Buschini may be back. The Brian Buschini of 2 years ago, that guy was back. And you look at where he pinned Colorado at the 2-yard line, what that did in that situation. It forced Shadur to panic on the play that ends up in the pick six. But he was a black shirt for you on Saturday night. And if they can get that out of him consistently, then that's something that I don't think all of us were like, oh, that's going to happen. He'll turn it around.
It was a question. It was an absolute question, and you just want consistency. And what was nice with Boom Sheedy was into the wind, with the wind. I mean, it was great hang time, and he didn't have a bad tee shot, so to speak.
Not to mention, you found your backup punter on Saturday, too, with Dylan Raiola. How about that pooch punt?
The old Randall Cunningham tribute. I loved it.
Buschini's probably won't or shouldn't get a lot of attempts on Saturday.
It's a problem if he has eight attempts.
The offense, if Nebraska's a 30-plus favorite, they ought to be producing points, with touchdowns and chasing down three. So Buschini may not get a whole lot of opportunities. We saw what he can do against Colorado. Okay, that's somebody we can rely on when we get into Illinois and Purdue and Rutgers in the opening part of Big Ten season. But Buschini, better not get a lot of play on Saturday against Northern Iowa.
Well, that's one of the things I talked about earlier the week on our other show, Hail Varsity Radio, was like a team that's got that championship mindset, that's got the right mentality, would come into a game like this not being satisfied with, you know what, we're gonna be clearing the benches at halftime and we're gonna be getting our week off. Like, teams with that true championship mentality see the opportunity in Northern Iowa to do some things that are special. Like, offensively, can you make it through an entire game without punting a la Ohio State against Nebraska's 2017 to 2019 or whatever that statistic was, whenever Ohio State just didn't punt against Nebraska? Or can the defense turn around and go out there and pitch a shutout for the first time since I don't know when? Those are the type of things that championship teams come into a game like this. It's not about, you know what, let's get through it and get to Illinois. You see the opportunity to go out there and do something special and to continue proving how good you can be. Can this defense go pitch a shutout? Can this offense go play with no punts in a game? Can they finish with points on every single drive? These are the type of things that I'm looking for from Nebraska against a team in Northern Iowa, that you should be able to go out there and go dominate. If Nebraska is able to go achieve goals like that, which I have a feeling they're probably talking about behind the scenes, those are the type of things that prove to me that this team has the types of goals and aspirations that Husker fans sit back and say, man, they could do this. They could make it to a college football playoff. They could make some noise in November in terms of the Big Ten race. The teams that will be doing that at the end of the year treat a game like Northern Iowa as an opportunity to go prove something, whether it be a shutout or a puntless game, whatever it may be.
You know, Rule talks a lot about loving the game. I want guys who love football. This is one of those ball games that it's a 180 from a anticipation standpoint, and guys want to go out there and just let it fly. And I'm anxious to see some of the reserve kids get on the field. I want to see how some of the second and third team linemen, offensive linemen, perform specifically. I'm interested to see how some of the they're so deep on the defensive line, but how do some of those young guys, specifically a Shavers or some of the young secondary, they may not be in coverage all that much, but how do they come up and set the edge or make a play on downhill running backs that, from a size and weight standpoint, they're going to see more and more in Big Ten action. The Average Joe Sports Show with you here. That's Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. The Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. Like and subscribe. The AJ Sports Pod on Twitter. Give that a follow. Tell a friend. And Spotify and iTunes. We'll get to some Big Ten games here in a little bit. We'll make our predictions as well. But Sharpie, the youth movement's been well documented. We all think there's a dude in Barney. You've got some guys on the defense that have really accepted their role and performed well with the depth on the defensive line. But one area that maybe seems to have been shaken out right now a little bit's running back. I want to go there for a minute because Nebraska has a chance to pretty much do what they want offensively, you would think, tomorrow. And that means Dillon goes out, but Dillon's probably eating a hot dog if things go right in the third quarter or even second quarter. But Dowdell's emergence, how he set the tone with his speed and his physicality, that combination could really be advantageous for Nebraska moving forward, because there's going to be teams that are going to be black and blue. I know there's the fumble question from 2 weeks ago, but Dowdell looks kind of special, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, he has made some great strides, I would say, in the last month. So the back end of camp, he's that physical downhill runner that likes to run into contact and doesn't run away. You know, there was a play, people are going to focus on the couple of runs, the touchdown run between the tackles, and then when he collided with Shiloh Sanders. I say collided. But there was another one where he could have probably just stepped out of bounds, but he went 2 more yards downfield just to create contact. And, you know, as long as he holds on to the football, he's a barreling, he's a bowling ball out there, and he's going to hit you. It's what can he do when he gets the thing I want to see, and this may be a continuous thing all year, is can guys get to the second and third level? What do they do? Do they have that extra gear, or do they just keep running? Like Ramir, I think, is better catching the ball than running the ball. But Dowdell is a weapon. because people don't want to tackle him. I mean, he's putting a thump on you, and he's smart enough, and he keeps the chains moving. I like where he's going. But at the end of the day, they're going to still be situational. I mean, look at Emmett Johnson. He only carried the ball one time. Gabe Ervin didn't carry the football. But Dowdell is at the top of the food chain, and I think that's a good thing for Nebraska.
I'm with you, Shady. I want to see the run game, but I want to see the offensive line because I agree with what Gary's saying about Dowdell. He's better than I thought he would be at this stage. He is a physical runner. Now, I wouldn't mind, how about, okay, you proved your point running over Shiloh Sanders. You made it clear in chasing three that was your intent. Message delivered. But how about a little shift, so that you don't have to take on that contact? Let's see a little hop to the left or to the right and then get around and get to the end zone. And you've got other DBs now thinking about that. But if this is an opportunity for Nebraska to work on its ground game and get more carries, because I think they said that, that's just the way the game went on Saturday. But everybody else, you're going to get a chance. Your Emmett Johnson, Gabe Ervin, and whoever else it might be. But so they're going to get an opportunity. But it is that second unit of offensive linemen that you're going to need some depth. Somebody's probably going to get hurt at some point. And I think this is a game to, divide up the snaps along the O-line with your first and second units, maybe dip into the thirds, and get some significant double-digit snaps for players that need it. They've been raving since he came on campus about Sledge. I would love to see that. Gatula some more. Brock Knutson perhaps. Bricks, all that. I want to see that the offensive line of the future, see what they can do now, because they might be really, really necessary getting into October and November.
I also want to see a guy on Saturday in Daniel Kalen. I think this is the game where you could get an extended look at Daniel Kalen at what he can do at the quarterback position. You saw the other two. You saw Harburg and Gramstad against UTEP. I think this might be the one where you go say, hey, this is your time, Daniel Kalen. The third quarter is yours into the fourth quarter, and we'll let Gramstad have mop-up duty. But I think this might be a game where you see an extended run out with him, to your point with the offensive line. But I want to get back to something that you said about Dowdell, and I think it applies to the entire running back room. And it just comes back to Nebraska's physical mindset running the football. Yeah, that starts with the offensive line. But one of the things that I was thinking about with that Dowdell run on Shiloh Sanders was that mindset of establishing the run and what it does to a defense. That establishing the run is about more than just, we can run the football. It's about establishing that mindset on the defense that, hey, these guys are going to come physically attack us today. And Dowdell, by going and running through Shiloh Sanders, in the mind of a safety or a defensive back, not just for Colorado, but for some team down the road, Illinois or Purdue, when they're watching Nebraska film, and they see Dowdell go and run over Shiloh Sanders, break his arm, and knock him out of the game, that's going to be in the mind for you whenever you go play Nebraska. Hey, this 23 guy, he broke Shiloh Sanders' arm. He absolutely trucked him. What's going to happen whenever you get a safety one-on-one for Illinois or Purdue with Dowdell, and they think, this guy's coming to attack me. This guy's coming to truck right through me and break my arm. That's what gives Dowdell that added ability to go give a little shimmy, make a miss, because that safety is expecting the downhill run, the guy that's going to run behind his pads, and then now in the first quarter, a 15-yard run becomes a 40 or 50-yard run because the safety is expecting that blow, and what does he get? He gets the shimmy. That's just something I wanted to add, and I didn't want to take away from your point about the offensive line, because I think we can get back there. It's a game that we're going to see plenty of backups in if all goes to plan for Nebraska. I just wanted to make that point about Dowdell and establishing the physical brand. It's more than just that game. It's important to establish it against Colorado, but by doing that on film early in the season, it's something that opponents are going to see later down the road, and they're going to see a running back that wants to run behind his pads. It makes things easier for the running back later whenever a safety is expecting that blow and they get the shimmy.
Yeah, hey, this is a violent football team.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
they embrace violence.
Along the lines, and I agree with that, especially defensively. Schmidt, you mentioned the perimeter blocking and the receivers. When Ron Brown was Nebraska's receivers coach back in the 90s, and I did a story every week on the receiver blocker of the week for Huskers Illustrated. And so Ron and I would talk on Sunday morning, and he'd give me his quotes and he'd give me his grading. And just like Milton Dan, grading pancakes with their O-line, Ron is breaking down the game to me about the blocking that Reggie Ball and Dave Sizes and Brendan Holbein did, right? Maybe not so much Kenny Cheatham, but that's another story. But those guys, those receivers Nebraska had back in the day with Ron Brown coaching him, mission one was to go punish defensive backs and to block, and be physical. And eventually they'd block, but then they'd pop open. And that's why Nebraska had the most efficient passing game in the Big 8, Big 12. They didn't throw the ball a lot, but those guys would get open because eventually, third, fourth quarter, those DBs were done. They kept getting hit, and they did not want to get hit anymore, so they were a little soft in the second half. And you want the perimeter blocking to be better. I would tell Ron, I would have Ron go meet with McGuire's kids for a little bit and say, my fullbacks are fine for a while. Here's what it looked like when the receivers would block back in the day, and it made the defensive backs susceptible to the routes, and they just didn't want to come up and make tackles. It's just a fact of life back in the day. So those receivers that Nebraska has, as talented as they are, Banks and Naor and Barney, and you're not very big, but Lloyd, yeah, they're fast. They might have great hands, but they have got to be more effective and more physical when called upon to block, because it'll make their game better and easier in the second half. So the perimeter blocking from the receivers is another key aspect in making this team go from good to really good to great.
It just kind of underscores really quickly. It just kind of underscores, though, how much easier football can become whenever you are the most physical team on the field. That's the importance of physicality. And Schmidt, I turn it over to you, but I just wanted to make that point.
No, it's absolutely. I was just going to make a smart aleck comment about how I'm sure Corey Dixon, Abdul Muhammad, Brendan Holbein were the itty bitty committee were all told they're going to catch 47 passes a game. No, and they took it out on the DBs.
Career. We misspoke.
Yeah, career.
Collectively, by the way, too.
Yeah, no, I know that's it. Well, Gerald's catching all the time. Yeah, I know.
Will Washington.
Gerald Armstrong shot out 9 touchdowns, 18 career catches. That's a ratio, but no, it's all right. I was going to ask from a reputation standpoint, and you guys have said the key word, physical, that to coaches who are in the analyst chair, I think that's what they're seeing about Nebraska, but it's been a good week nationally for Nebraska. Every big time talking head or, YouTube show, college football star host has been talking up Nebraska between Klatt and McAfee. And so Nebraska's got some buzz, and there's those folks in the national media rooting for Nebraska because they want college football to have Nebraska a part of it again when they matter. And right now Nebraska matters again, which is great. And it was an exclamation point to the hype of Prime last week. But as you see Nebraska right now, where do you think they are from a national reputation right now through 2 weeks? And Bill, I'll start with you. We'll go around the horn here before we get to some big 10 picks. What's Nebraska's rep right now? Is it just sexy to say watch out for Nebraska, or do you think it's believable?
I think it's believable because of what Matt Rule did at Temple and Baylor. And I think people were anticipating this coming into the season. Nebraska would make an improvement from the 5-7 season based on what he did by year 3 in Philadelphia and down in Waco. And I said on one of the earlier episodes, really year 1 for Matt Rule has to be considered year 2 because they go 5-7. So the improvement this year really needs to be 8+, 9+ wins this season. But based on Matt Rule's track record of building a program, and then the understood investment that Nebraska has made in its football program and everything that he has at as resources, and with the talent that's here, again getting Raiola, I think people are looking at this going, yeah, this is just what Matt Rule has done, and now he has everything he could ever possibly want. And so this is not surprising people. And yeah, I think they've been wanting to talk about Nebraska. They do like Matt Rule. The media loves Matt Rule, and that's part of it too. And so I think, yeah, it's sexy, but I think, Matt's kind of earned that based on what he's done to this point.
What's the old street cred right now, Sharpie, with Nebraska?
No, it's great. I mean, look at the past week. It's only 2 games, and Bill's absolutely right. And we've discussed this a lot. Is Matt Rule is the best PR coach Nebraska football's had in a long time. People like him. He likes to talk football. He's a good guy. He's authentic. He gives you access. They have a lot of momentum going right now, and they've got some work to do. I mean, they are by far not a finished product, and there's much tougher things down the road that are going to be ahead of them. And we're all curious on how they're going to handle success and people talking about them, and not just about the quarterback, but a lot of different guys, how all that unfolds. But they're in a good spot right now. I think another part of the national media that are talking about Nebraska, and maybe even throwing them in as a wild card in the college football playoff after 2 weeks, is there's a lot of momentum on and off the field for Nebraska. New facility. Matt Rule, Terrence Knight, and they come to Omaha. They're on the sidelines. Kids want to take selfies with them. Rule's playing catch with a kid. I mean, it's good to be Nebraska football right now. So, like, tomorrow night is one of those things of you got to keep the momentum going. And then how far can you keep the momentum going? Because I think Nebraska's in a really good spot, and I think people nationally recognize that. And it comes back to, man, isn't college football better when Nebraska is better? Well, we say that because we're kind of biased, but yeah, because it's got a passionate fan base that likes to talk about the sport.
Well, and I think back to even within the past 10, 15 years, there's been teams that have been national brands that the national media, it felt like, has rooted for to come back. I think of Michigan post-Rich Rod, where Michigan's down in the dumps and they're losing to Appalachian State. And I remember there was one game where there was some sort of rain delay and there was maybe 5,000 people in the big house for a game. I think that was Rich Rod's last year. And then Harbaugh comes in, and there was the Amazon Prime documentary that followed around Michigan and everything. People wanted Michigan to be back for a little bit. And then you go to Tennessee, where everyone was watching Tennessee upset Alabama because it's been so long since Tennessee's been great. And it felt like America outside of the state of Alabama was rooting for Tennessee in that game. If Nebraska does what people think that they can do over the next couple of games, which I think Nebraska should be favored in every single game up until that Ohio State game, could be a similar story in Columbus where America is rooting for Nebraska because it's been so long. People get sick and tired of the same people running the sport. That was the definition of the 4-team college football playoff, is nobody rooted for Bama anymore. Nobody roots for Ohio State nationally because you want that team that you haven't had the chance to watch for a little bit to come in and upset the apple cart. Like, it's as simple as that. I think people want a team that can come in and can change up college football and can make watching it for the casual viewer more interesting, because it's no fun to turn on a game and go, well, we all know Georgia's going to win this one, or we all know Alabama's going to win this one. It's more fun when there's more parity, and Nebraska's a team that so many people grew up watching and loving. It makes for a great story. So not only do they see the components with a Matt Rule-led football team with one of the most talented true freshmen in the country leading the way on offense, but they see a program that would make college football more fun because it adds to the parity. And everyone knows Nebraska's got the resources to make it happen. Do they have the talent and the people to make it happen? And it seems like right now Nebraska's got the talent and the people to add to the parity in college football and make it more fun for everybody. That's why people are saying Nebraska could be back, because it's got the story behind it and they have the people in place that can do it.
You've got the swag, and you've got the Raiola factor too. I mean, he's young, he's fresh, he's talented. It's fun to watch him play football. I mean, he's kind of must see. Even he's 8 quarters into his career, he's making some plays and he's doing the routine, which doesn't always happen when you're 18 or 19 years old.
And look how he's conducting himself in and I mean this in a good way, in chasing three. I mean, if you see, the exuberance in the locker room, he's right there with his boys. He's having fun. And, when in the final moments of the Colorado game, when, he backs away from the line of scrimmage and goes to center field and orchestrates the crowd. I mean, this is everything that he wanted when he decided, you know what, I do want to go to Nebraska. And to see him having fun with his boys, I think it's really cool to see that in the locker room. But one thing I wanted to bring up, and Gary, this may be more of a leading comment to you, but You all know how I feel about recruiting, and that's not much. But I look at it in different ways oftentimes in reading between the lines. The Christian Jones commitment this past weekend, I think is, people will look at it and go, well, Nebraska's getting a great linebacker, an incredible athlete, good student, all of that. And they are. And you can break it down as to how he's going to fit into the 3-3-5 and Rod Dvorak and Terrence Knight and Tony White, all that stuff. But here's a guy that was coveted by a lot of schools around the country and still had an open, his recruiting was still open, was scheduled, I believe, to go to Oklahoma this week. Still had Miami, who's an up-and-coming team, and I've been talking with a lot of places. And I put this in with moments that I say have been significant for this football team this year. Robinson saying, I'm coming back. Raiola saying, I'm not going to Georgia, I'm coming to Nebraska. And for Christian Jones to give his commitment to Nebraska at this point and not carry out the recruitment, not be wined and dined, and I mean that rhetorically, by Oklahoma, Miami. Carter Nelson led Nebraska along a little while, and justifiably so. I'm not knocking him, but I'm going to go to the Notre Dame USC game, and Nick Saban's still coming, and Marcus Freeman is still coming. I'm still talking to Georgia. This went on for a little while, this song and dance. For Christian Jones to say, you know what, I see it now, and this is what I want to do. And kind of under the radar a little bit. It was just like, Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday night, it was Christian Jones commits. This is what I want. I like what's going on in Lincoln. So it's for those reasons that I'm intrigued and interested in his commitment, not so much what he brings as a player, which is great. But I think it's a big moment for him to give his commitment when he did, leading to or going along with what Gary said about how people are feeling about it.
Yeah, I think it's all about momentum. You want to be a part of it. His comment about he had to see it, and then once he saw Colorado tap out, and it was because of Nebraska that he knew that was the place for him, they've got a chance here for this to pop because they've got a quarterback that I think is the front door to the football program that people are talking about, and then they're going, let's see if there's more than Raiola. And then you look at that defense, and you're like, okay, Matt Rule's got something going here that they've maybe fast-forwarded this Matt Rule plan. It's just good vibes all the way around right now for Nebraska football. People want to talk about Nebraska football, and they want to be a part of Nebraska football. Man, if you can put those two together, you got something working here. And I think that's exactly what Saturday night did for Nebraska football inside that stadium and outside that stadium.
And inside the state.
Yeah.
And in Omaha, where there's a lot of talent that a lot of people want. And for him to say, I'm in now, I think that's a big deal.
It's Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, The Average Joe Sports Show, The Average Joe Sports Show YouTube. Like and subscribe to the channel, the AJ Sports Pod. Follow on Twitter, Spotify, and iTunes. Like and subscribe. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback. What Big Ten game is most intriguing to you this weekend? I've got 3 of them, and you can say other or add in. Bama, Wisconsin, Irish at Purdue, Indiana, UCLA. Of course, the Civil War. Oregon's also at Oregon State. Elijah, you got something circled?
I do like Indiana, UCLA, but
-3 Hoosiers. When the hell that ever happened? Not with Bob Knight or John Wooden.
I think that's interesting from a Nebraska point of view. How good is Indiana? How good is UCLA? We might not know after this one, but you can at least get the eye test. It's probably got the least implications to Nebraska, but it's got to be Alabama and Wisconsin being at the top of that list, though, right? Luke Fickell in year 2, I've had my doubts the entire time that he has been there, that he has the right plan in place or the right concept of a plan to rebuild Wisconsin. Wisconsin is going up against an absolute wagon in Alabama this weekend. I think they're going to get absolutely killed, but I'll be curious to see what happens. Maybe I have miscalculated how good Wisconsin is this year, and Luke Fickell in year 2's got it turned around. I don't think so. I think Wisconsin gets killed, and I think that's the moment, the come to Jesus moment for a lot of Wisconsin fans that, hey, maybe what we had rocking for years and years with physical lines of scrimmage and a not sexy offense was a good formula for winning around here. I think they might have that moment on Saturday with Alabama, and that's why that's my pick. But I do think Indiana, UCLA is pretty intriguing too.
Old Wisconsin to get killed, new Wisconsin might get killed. It's just a Wisconsin problem. It's a Wisconsin problem to schedule Bama. Sharpie, what do you got?
You keep an eye on Purdue. They sold out homecoming. Nebraska plays there in 2 weeks. A home team getting double-figure points, coming off a week. What Notre Dame just went through. But the vibe in Madison, and I don't want to overlook Indiana, UCLA, because I think it's cool because the Indiana fans get to go to the Rose Bowl. When was the last time they went to the Rose Bowl?
67.
But Indiana's got my attention. Now they just need to ramp it up in competition. But back to Wisconsin and Alabama. I mean, I wonder what the vibe is in Madison. We just spent the last segment talking about the vibe with Nebraska football. Rule and Fickle and Dion were all hired at the same time. So you look at where Colorado is, where Wisconsin is, where Nebraska is. It's almost like Wisconsin is supposed to be where Nebraska is, and Nebraska is supposed to be between where Wisconsin and Nebraska is right now. The vibe is weird in Madison. I don't think they will upset Alabama. I still have a hard time quitting Wisconsin, but man, there's something missing. The aura, the offense that is just consistently bullying you and ramming it down your throat. I think it's a big moment for Fickle because if they lay a major egg, then people are like, whoa, where is this rebuild going? Did we make the wrong decision at quarterback? Because I tell you, people in Iowa City right now, they're talking about their portal quarterback, and they're like, yeah, we made the wrong decision.
You know what they're missing in Wisconsin, Sharpie? They're missing those Wisconsin boys in the recruiting. The big 6'7", 300-pound monsters that you could pull out of the upper Great Lakes region. They're not going there anymore. I looked. I don't have it off pull up in front of me. Off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure since Fickle has arrived, he has signed a total of 3 players from the state of Wisconsin in his recruiting classes. I think I have that number right. It ain't what made Wisconsin for 20 years, and that's why I think they're missing. Is they don't understand what their recruiting base is.
As Kranak would say, all those Swedes that get signed from the Great Lake region.
I think Wisconsin may have hired a good coach for the wrong job.
Yep.
Sometimes it just doesn't quite fit that well. I think Fickle's a really good coach, and he wanted to move on from Cincinnati, and that's a big job. But he might be better suited for someplace else. I don't know. It just seems like an odd fit, and the way it was rolled out, even when he got hired, was certainly much different than the way Matt Rule got rolled out at Nebraska. But maybe Nebraska just does things a little bit differently than others do. So I'm kind of intrigued as to not necessarily that game, but how the whole season plays out for them. And Nebraska will know in November. The Civil War has my attention. Can Oregon State continue the momentum that they got earlier this week by raiding the Pac-12 or the Mountain West to reassemble the Pac-6? Maybe they're going to sit back and say, hey, we got our conference sort of again. And they have Oregon at home, but I think Oregon's probably going, okay, we're tired of getting kicked around after the first 2 weeks. So that might be a duck blowout. But I'm looking at Purdue and Indiana. Purdue had a week off, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a rough go last week. Can they get it right? And how much is Purdue laying in wait at home to take them on? So I think Purdue is a team that Nebraska ought to keep an eye on too, because that's the first road test of the year, and they'll get a pretty good idea of what they'll be in for on Saturday.
Maybe it turns out that Nebraska did get everyone's first choice. Nebraska getting Matt Rule, Wisconsin, Colorado, some of the other programs, probably making phone calls, knocking on the door 2 years ago. Nebraska may have got it done, and things are looking good for Nebraska. Score predictions, I'm going to say 35-12 for field goals. Nebraska does not cover, but they win, and they run the football. Sharpie.
42-10. Nebraska makes it pretty easy, and the human victory cigar, Jalen Gramstad, comes in to take the final snap.
I still like 77 or 73-8 with the Huskers winning, but I want
safeties, huh?
I want to see some chasing field goals If we're going to chase
Okay.
3, this is the week to do it. Complimenting some touchdowns. Nebraska's the kicking game has got to be there for the Big Red. And I don't mean Buschini because I don't think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. But Nebraska's got to get some consistency in the kicker position.
Elijah, what do you got?
I got Nebraska 38-3. I think it might be a bit of a slower start than people like, but the run game takes a toll. Nebraska pulls away late, and Northern Iowa gets on the board with a field goal. Let's go late in the third quarter. Late in the third quarter, they get on the board with the field goal. Nebraska doesn't achieve the shutout, but it is a solid wire-to-wire victory that Husker fans never quite feel stressed for.
Like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, on Twitter at the AJ Sports Pod. Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt will be live with you 10:30 Sunday morning back here on the Average Joe Sports Show channel. Have a good weekend.